I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 252, Self-Pity. If your husband is struggling with a pornography problem and you want some help with it and you are not finding the resources that you like, you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn. I am a certified life coach. I am an active member of the LDS faith, and I am the wife of a former porn addict. And on this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools that you need in order to start your healing journey. This is where I'm going to show you how to dive deep into intentional living, how to rekindle connection with your spouse, how to manage all that emotional turmoil that you're feeling, how to break the addiction cycle that you have to your husband's addiction, and tell you all of the ways to do that and start healing. I am so glad that you're here, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Good morning, my ladies. I hope you guys are having a beautiful morning. It has been a great day. One of my favorite things that happened this weekend, ladies, just to share with you a little bit about my life, is that I got a weighted vest. Okay. If you guys know what this is or you don't know what it is, I'm so excited. This is something that I've been wanting for months, if not even longer. And it's just a vest that you put weights into and you wear it while you're walking. And I love taking walks. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you guys know I love walking. It's where I listen to my worship music, and it's just my time to have some one-on-one time with Jesus, and it's wonderful. And I wanted to make the workout a little bit more intense, a little harder, and so I got this weighted vest just on Amazon. It's amazing. If you follow me on Instagram, you can message me. I'll send you the link. It's machine washable. It zips. You don't have to put it over your head. I got it this weekend. I've already used it a couple of times, and I'm so happy. That's probably been the highlight of my weekend. And so I just wanted to share that with you because I used it again this morning and it made me so happy. So if you guys like to take walks and you're interested, you can message me and I will share you the link because it's been great. And another thing that is exciting, ladies and gentlemen, well, just ladies for now, is that my husband is going to be joining me on a little bit of a new branch of the business, and we are going to be announcing that soon as the details are up. He has been working with me in our couples course. For those of you guys who missed it, we have been running for the last 5 weeks a 6-week couples course, how to have a porn-free marriage. And it has been fantastic. The feedback has just been exceptional. And we just kept getting feedback that they want more of it, more ways to keep working with us together. And so we are working on a way to make that happen. So I would encourage you to join my email list so that you can be the first to know when the announcement of that comes out. But it is going to include Rob, and it is going to be having him work with me to help work more with the men and women as couples and individually and moving forward. So excited about that. And I'll put the link in the show notes for you to join the wait list so that when we do, I have been getting messages of when are you going to do the next cohort on the couples course? When are you going to take the next set of couples through? And I will let you guys know. So that wait list will be the first to know. So I'll put the link there so that you guys can sign up. Just shoot your email. You'll just drop your email in it, and then you'll be the first to know when that happens. If you guys aren't getting my emails, then make sure you guys check your spam folder. If you're signed up for my emails and you aren't getting them, just check your spam folder. Usually they go into there. Okay. All right, ladies, I want to dive in today into self-pity, and I'm super excited about this. This is something I have seen come up. I've been talking to my husband about it a lot over the last couple of weeks. I've seen it come up a couple of times in my clients. And so I wanted to really get into it here so that you guys can become more aware when it's happening. And we'll also go into why it's so important to notice. Okay. So first of all, I want to go over the definition of self-pity. So when you look up the definition of self-pity in the dictionary, it says that self-pity, it's an emotion. It is an excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over one's troubles. Okay. So it's an excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over your own troubles, the own horrible things going on in your life. And I know that we've all been there, and we can totally have moments of self-pity. But self-pity is one of those emotions that I would call an indulgent emotion. It's an emotion that we indulge in because it feels good, even though it's technically a negative emotion, right? It's not something that feels great. It's unhappiness, right? You're sitting and you're wallowing in unhappiness. That's not a pleasant emotion. But because of the reason we attach to it, it's something that we enjoy doing. We enjoy having an unhappiness over our own troubles, especially when we attribute our own troubles to not being our fault. And this is why it's so important to become aware when we're sitting in self-pity, is because it keeps us in a victim mentality. Okay, when we are sitting in our own troubles and we are saying that our own troubles are not our fault, that there's nothing we can do about them, then we sit there and there's nothing we can do and we don't move forward. This is why we feel stuck. This is why we say self-pity is an indulgent emotion, because we want to indulge in it. There's no way out, okay, until you make a conscious shift in your mindset to decide this is no longer something that I want to do. Okay, we're all going to have moments of self-pity. It's just an emotion. We can feel it, we can process it, but that's very different than sitting in it, than wallowing. Like, there's a reason we have that phrase where you're wallowing in self-pity, because that's what we tend to do. We tend to get in there and then we just kind of stay. And one of the reasons that we do that, one of the reasons why we like self-pity, is because it actually appeals a little bit to our pride. Again, especially when we attribute the reason for our problems or our unhappiness to the fault of others, right? And there's nothing we can do about it, then it feels kind of good because then it's not our fault, okay? But the problem is when it's not our fault, then there's nothing we can do and then we stay stuck. And it's not true. For the most part, self-pity is an indulgent emotion around circumstances and situations that we actually can change. It's just we're not choosing to recognize it. And let me give you guys an example of this. I was on a coaching call last week and I had a client who was telling me all the reasons why she was so overwhelmed, why it was so unfair of everything that was happening to her and all the things that she had going on. And it was a list of very serious things, okay? Some health issues and struggles and mental health issues with her and her family. And she was taking care of so many people and they were relying on her. And she said, and nobody's asking how I'm doing. And I paused her after she said that, after she told me everything. And I said, that is self-pity. It's saying, and look at all the hard things I'm doing. And everybody's relying on me. And that's the little hit to our pride, that says, yeah, and look at how good I'm handling this. And everybody's asking me to do this. And yet nobody's asking how I'm doing. And that's the self-pity part of the woe is me. Look how hard everything is. Now, I am not here to suggest that your life is not as hard as you think it is, okay? I'm sure your life is very hard. I'm sure there are many, many reasons why you are feeling self-pity, and they are all 100% valid. However, when we sit in self-pity, we can't get out of it. What I want to offer is that you can acknowledge the difficulty that you're facing without going into self-pity. Because self-pity is an unhappiness around the circumstances and hardships that you're facing, and that's 100% optional. Just because you're going through something hard doesn't mean that you have to have an unhappiness around it, okay? Remember, going back to the definition of self-pity, it's an excessive self-absorbed unhappiness. I'm not suggesting you have to be happy about the hard things that are happening, but what I am offering is that you can acknowledge, yes, this hard thing is happening, and I don't have to sit in an excessive self-absorbent amount of unhappiness around it, because all that does is make it even harder. You guys know I talk about layering emotions. What you're going through is hard enough. You don't need to make it harder by adding more emotional weight on top of what you're already trying to navigate. Does this make sense? And so many of you struggle with this. So many of us as humans struggle with this, and it's unintentionally making what you're going through so much harder, okay? Rather than just having your husband dealing with a pornography problem, recognizing that, acknowledging, yes, this is hard. This is a difficult circumstance that I'm going through. We then add on more on top of that. This is so hard. I've been dealing with it for so long. Nobody knows what I'm going through. Nobody understands me. Nobody knows that this is what's going on, and so it's not fair that they're asking me X, Y, and Z. And that is the self-pity that's just adding emotional weight that you do not need. Okay. So what's fascinating is when I looked up self-pity, I got very curious as to how it's different than pity. And I'm going to read you this definition. I want you guys to see if you can catch it. Okay. So we talked about self-pity, and here's the definition of pity. Okay. It's the feeling of sorrow and compassion caused by the suffering and misfortune of others. Okay. The difference between pity and self-pity is that pity has compassion and self-pity doesn't. Okay, remember, self-pity is an excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness about one's own troubles. Okay, and the difference is that when we look at our own troubles, we get an excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness around it, whereas when we see other people's troubles, then we feel sorrow for them and compassion. And we aren't offering that to ourselves. Does this make sense? Are you guys seeing the difference? It's so fascinating that we do this, that we look at the things, the hard things that other people are going through, and we feel sorrow and compassion for them for what they're suffering. And yet when it's us, it's a self-absorbed unhappiness. And that self-absorbed unhappiness, when we're lacking the compassion, comes with a lot of judgment. It comes with a lot of judgment, not only of how we are handling it, but also judgment for other people, especially when we attribute our own unhappiness and our circumstances to the fault and responsibility of others. And that's what we want to work on changing. I think a lot of times the reason that we are able to have pity for others, which includes compassion, is because we see them as the victim. We see them as the one who is not at fault for their situation, right? If we see somebody who has a situation and we do think it's their fault, then usually we don't have a lot of pity for them, right? That's where the lack of compassion will come in, because we'll have judgment for them instead. We'll say, well, that's their fault. They brought it on themselves. This is their own doing, etc. And so that isn't what brings pity, okay? Because that brings judgment. However, self-pity, right, is we often don't have compassion. And again, even though it keeps us in a place where it's not our fault, which is something that we like. That's what enables the pitying part, because it's not our fault. That's also the part that leaves us in a space where we're the victim and there's nothing that we can do, which leads us to feeling stuck. So as you guys listen to this podcast today, I really want to encourage you to take the time over the next couple of days, over the next week, to ask yourself, where am I having a lot of self-pity? Where am I feeling like I am the victim? And maybe this comes out with your husband's pornography problem, but maybe it's coming out in your communication. I always try to bring stuff up and he always deflects. I always try to communicate more and he always turns it into an argument. Anything like that, or I'm trying to lose weight, but my body just can't. It's harder for me than for anyone else. Thoughts like that, where there's a comparison, where it's, I'm trying my hardest, there's nothing I can do, or there's everything out, all my circumstances are working against me. Those are little red flags, little indications that you are in self-pity. And again, if we go back to the definition of self-pity, let's look at it again. An excessive, self-absorbed unhappiness over one's own troubles. And again, I'm not saying that you don't have permission to acknowledge the difficulty of your circumstances. 100% acknowledge the difficulty of your circumstances. What I am offering is that you don't have to wallow in self-pity in order for them to acknowledge that they're hard. I was just on a one-on-one call this morning with a client, and we were talking about how she has a lot of self-judgment. Okay, so she's the opposite, which self-judgment can sometimes can be self-pity as well, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, and I can't believe that this is the worst, and all those things. But one of the things that I was talking to her about is that we can acknowledge our difficult circumstances and also still acknowledge that we don't need to stay stuck in them, okay? So self-pity wants to say, this is a really hard thing, and we just need to stay stuck in that loop of, this is a really hard thing. This isn't my fault. There's nothing I can do, etc. And I want to acknowledge, yes, this is a really hard thing, and I can totally handle it. Or I'm learning how to handle it. Or I'm learning the skills to navigate it. Or I can do something about it. And that's when the shift starts to happen, ladies. That is when we start to shift into an actionable mindset where we can actually take charge of our life again. The reason why your husband's pornography problem is so difficult, the reason why any hard circumstance that you go through is so difficult is because, one, it's hard, but two, it's harder when we then tell ourselves there's nothing we can do. When you start taking action toward changing it to create the result that you want, that's when you start taking control back of your life, and that's when everything starts to shift. And it's not like your results are going to change overnight. You might not be able to change the circumstance. You might not be able to change whether or not your husband watches pornography, but what you can change is how you show up in that circumstance, and that makes all the difference. You can show up differently in the same body, weighing the exact same amount. You can show up differently when you talk to your husband and he wants to respond defensively. It doesn't mean you have to rise to the occasion. Your husband can still watch pornography, and you can take control back of how you're affected by it. You do not have to sit in self-pity just because your circumstances are hard. In fact, that's the only thing that's going to keep you stuck in those circumstances. So if you are tired of your circumstances, if you are tired of all of the hard things that are happening in your life, then I want to offer that you can start getting out of self-pity, and that's going to be the key to start changing all of it. Okay? I love you ladies so much, and I will see you guys next week on a brand new episode. So take care. All right, ladies, if you are loving what you're learning on the podcast, I want to invite you to take the next step and come join my lifetime access coaching program. This is where we take everything that you're learning on the podcast and I help you personally apply it so that you can create a true transformation. This is where you're going to learn how to actually process that emotional pain and finally let it go so that you can be free from it once and for all. This is where you learn how to become in control and confident in facing the future so that you never have to worry about what happens next. Head to my website, jolenewind.com, and sign up today. You will get lifetime access, and I'm going to help you one-on-one on all of the calls. I can't wait to see you there.